Yep.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tailgate Talk. We're your hosts, David and Nick. Nick, say hi to the people.
Howdy.
All right, today we're going to talk about the last week of college football. Crazy week, probably the best matchups we've seen all year, might see for the rest of the year. A lot of craziness going on, but we're Clemson fans, so first game we're going to talk about Tigers going down to Tallahassee to go up against the Noles. Uh, Historic rivalry, one that is always tough. Um, Talent across the board. We had, in the end, Clemson won 34-28. Um, we're up by 3 scores going into the fourth quarter, and then the Noles came roaring back trying to make a game of it. Uh, so it was a fun night, a lot of fun watching, a lot of good plays made on both sides.
Uh, gotta gotta give credit to Florida State. They played well. Except for that, it really came down to that middle eight in the last 4 minutes, first half, first 4 minutes, the second half. At that point, Clemson went on I think that was during their 24-point run, and in those 8 minutes, they outscored Florida State 17-0. It was a big game for ACC Atlantic race. Florida State's trying to stay in there any way they can. I think this loss officially, if they weren't already, their ACC Atlantic hopes are done. Clemson really solidified their spot. With a win against Syracuse next week, they can bring out the Orange Britches against Louisville. Um, like you said, it was big plays on both sides. Jordan Travis played his butt off. He was the reason why Florida State was still in that game. At the end of the day, Clemson made a couple more plays, and that was what it came down to. Great atmosphere. I forgot how fun it was to have a night game in Doe Campbell when both teams are good. I think it's been 4 years since we played. Even then, the last time we played in Doe Campbell, I'm pretty sure it was the book game. So it's been a while since we've had that competitive 2016 game where Jordan Leggett scores the final touchdown, putting his arm down and staying in bounds somehow. So it's been a while, and it was fun to kind of have that rivalry back. I've been missing it.
Yeah, I mean, Florida State came out firing on offense. Got out to a 7-0 lead, 14-7. Looked like they were imposing their will. Actually outgained Clemson. I think they had the time of possession in their favor too. I mean, they gave Clemson their best shot. But I think in the end it came down to the middle eight, as it's starting to be called, the last 4 minutes of the first half and the first 4 minutes of the second half, where Clemson's got 17 unanswered points. And that was really the difference in the game right there.
Credit to Florida State. They played for Norvell. I think that he, as much as some Florida State fans want him gone, I think that he's got them in the right direction. I don't think people realized how bad the program was where he had to come in and fix everything. I think that, they should have beaten NC State. They were very close to beating us last night. And they played Wake tough. Like those are the three best teams in the ACC right now. So to be able to match up and lose against NC State and Clemson in consecutive weeks by a combined 8 points, you got to feel pretty good about yourself seeing where you were just a few years ago. So I think Florida State fans should relax a little bit. Norvell's got you. I think they're going to be back in contention sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I mean those three teams they played in the last 3 weeks are the best teams in the Atlantic, outside of Syracuse this year. But the considered cream of the crop from last year, the teams that have the most firepower, the best coaches, and Florida State took them all down to the wire. So I think they're trending in the right direction. It should be really good to see what they do next year. Hopefully they can right the ship, get themselves a couple more wins, get a bowl game, and have a successful season.
I think they should be able to beat Florida. I think that they'll find another win along the way. So I think they should be able to get the bowl eligibility pretty easily. And I think that as much as I'd like to rag on our cousin that goes to Florida State or went there, they're a good team. It's more fun when they're good. it's more fun to have that game where it's back and forth and it's exciting. So that's, I think, as a sport fan, that's what I'm. The ACC is better when Florida State's good.
Oh yeah. All right. So we're moving on to the noon game. We had number 5 Michigan against number 10 Penn State. First
Ooh.
half was an interesting half. Penn State got in there. I think they ended up having a 17-16 lead early in the third quarter, and then Michigan found their footing and put the gas all the way down and ended up winning 41-17.
Blake Corum solidified himself in the Heisman race this week. He looked, I mean, Michigan just ran the ball all over Penn State in the second half. Like it was impressive. And I mean, I've been critical of them. I've said they really haven't shown me what that they deserve to be in the top 5, let alone the top 4. I think they showed it this week. I think Penn State was the best team they played. And I mean, at the end of the day, you have to stop punishing teams. I'm talking to myself here. You have to stop punishing teams for who they play because they just play who's in front of them. So I think Michigan showed that they are legit. I think that their rushing attack with Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum is lethal. So I think, especially after this game, I think it's all coming down to that rivalry week matchup with Ohio State, and I think that's going to be fireworks. So I'm excited for that one.
Yep. I mean, they still got Michigan State on the schedule. But outside of and Michigan State hasn't been great this year, but I think if Michigan can hold on to then they're setting up a big weekend against Ohio State at the end of the season.
And that, of course, it's all coming down to Ohio State taking care of business as well. Like they're gonna have they're gonna play Penn State. They're getting into the bulk of their conference schedule, but I think if these two teams can play up to their potential and take care of business, I think that that's going to be what's I think it's going to make for a great matchup on November 26th. And I'm looking at Michigan's schedule right now. They have Michigan State, then they go to Rutgers, Nebraska at home, Illinois at home, and then they're going to the Big House, or not the Horseshoe. So
Illinois could be a sneaky game here. Illinois got some momentum going.
It could be.
They've got a running back who's also making a case for himself nationally. The guy's just insane with I think 8 straight 100-yard games.
I think that Michigan gets them at home. I think that that's going to be I think that's going to be all they need to do. I think it's setting up for a great matchup against Ohio State.
Who are Michigan's away games? Is it just really Ohio State?
What was that?
Who are Michigan's away games? Is it just Ohio State? Really? I
So
mean, you've got
Michigan
Indiana,
only has to,
Rutgers, Michigan State.
yeah, they went to Iowa.
Yeah. So I mean, you got to take care of business. Michigan is doing what they need to do. So it's going to be interesting to see how the playoff committee looks at these teams as we get down to the wire. Because you can only have one team from that division in the Big Ten play for the championship. So you're not going to have one of them be a runner up, but they only have one loss. So how does the playoff committee look at a team like that versus a Clemson versus a UCLA right now that's rolling in the Pac-12, or if you look at the Big 12, you've got TCU undefeated still, or Oklahoma State could revenge their loss that they just had this weekend. So a lot of football left to play. It's gonna be interesting.
I'm hoping that we're gonna get to the case where we have to leave out a one-loss team because, like you said, TCU is undefeated, UCLA is undefeated. There's a team in every major Power 5 conference that's actually undefeated this year, and I feel like we haven't been, at least this late in the season, that hasn't happened in a while. I could be completely wrong, but I feel like it hasn't been there. In the Big Ten, you got Michigan and Ohio State. In the ACC, you got Clemson and Syracuse. And the SEC, there's Georgia and Tennessee. And the Pac-12, there's UCLA, Ole Miss too. And then in the Big 12, you got TCU. There's undefeated teams in every conference right now. So it's going to be interesting to see how these teams finish down the stretch. Like you said, all these football games we played. I'm hoping for a case where we have to leave out an undefeated Power Five champ for another one. Like I don't want there to be a one-loss team. I want it to be the best teams in the country, and I hopefully it shakes out that way. We'll have to see if TCU can keep it up, UCLA can keep it up.
We didn't even mention Georgia.
No, I said
The reigning
Georgia.
national champ. Oh,
I
you
said
did?
Georgia. I said Georgia.
I misheard that. I misheard that.
Yeah, Georgia and Tennessee. That game in Athens will be must-see television. I think that's going to be a massive one. I don't know when it is, but I know it's at Georgia, so it's going to be. I think that is going to become the biggest game of the rest of the season so far.
I think that game's not until November 5th.
Okay,
So right after the first playoff ranking, we get we'll find out what's going on with the SEC East.
Tennessee's playing UT Martin and Kentucky before Georgia. That's another thing. Tennessee has to take care of Kentucky first, and then Georgia plays Florida and then Tennessee. So it'll be interesting to see what comes of that game. I think that's going to be the game day primetime game. So I'm excited for that one.
All right, we'll go to another back and forth game. Game that Nick and I were split on. That unfortunately I came off on the wrong side of. We got Oklahoma State TCU going to double OT. The TCU Horned Frogs at home being too much for Oklahoma State. They're still undefeated right now, and now they're I think they're in the top 10 in the AP.
I think they're number 8.
So TCU looking really good. This is a game I think that very likely could be the Big 12 championship game in December. So I'm all for seeing that game again.
Me too. And the biggest game, another undefeated in the conference team, is Kansas State. TCU plays Kansas State this week. That'll be an interesting game to see who kind of sets himself up as the front runner for the Big 12. I think it's setting up to be a fun fall. TCU kind of, I think they were favorites, but I think a lot of people assumed that Oklahoma State would kind of handle it, and then Oklahoma State goes up 24-7, and TCU just battles back. They used a 14-point fourth quarter to tie it up and then go into overtime. They made a stop, forced a field goal, and came out with a touchdown. I think that TCU kind of earned some flowers this week. So I think their rushing attack it's lethal, and the wide receiver Quentin Johnston, he's been unreal. So I think Max Duggan's got him in the right spot. TCU can do some damage.
For sure. A late night game we had as well. We had USC Utah, another game that we were split on. That again, I came on the short end of. This game was nuts. This game was absolutely insane. The last couple minutes, especially where you've got back and forth. You get Utah going down the field, scoring a late touchdown, and saying, "We're not playing for overtime. We're going to win it right here." And they go and they get that 2-point conversion, win 43-42. It was a fun game to watch to see the fireworks there. And USC going on the road. I mean, they just their defense couldn't find an answer for Utah late.
I think that Utah was playing with some extra forces. Ty Jordan, Aaron Lowe, rest in peace. I think that they were honoring them with their helmets. It was a beautiful tribute. It's hard to beat a team when they're hurting like that and when they're playing for their brothers, especially in an already tough environment in Salt Lake City. USC played well. I just think that it was Utah's night, and I think that Cam Rising, I think he kind of showed who he is as a quarterback, and it was a fun game to watch. It was fun.
I tell you what, he's got a favorite receiver in his tight end, Kincaid. Dude had 16 catches, 234 yards. I mean, it's just wow. That's a stat line right there just from yardage, and we're not even going to get to the best receiving yet for the night.
Yeah, we're saving that one, but I think Utah Cam Rising found. I think he was perfect. I think he was 16 of 16 when targeting his tight end. I think that I think it was a record for the most yards, or he was one off the record for most receptions by a tight end in a game. I think the record was 17.
Yeah, something like
But
that.
great game, great fun atmosphere.
Our final game that we had split. I got on the board here, Illinois, Minnesota. The Illini able to handle the Gophers in Illinois, 26-14. Tommy DeVito looking good. And then Chase Brown, the running back for Illinois, like I said, he had 41 carries. 41 carries that game for 180 yards. They were riding him, and he just kept getting better and better as the game went on. Uh, I think that low key that could be a very competitive game when they play against Michigan. But we'll see. Michigan found that way to be able to stranglehold teams in the second half. If Illinois can stay within it late, who knows? Because they've got a quarterback who did really well moving the ball around and making plays. And then their running back is a workhorse.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you see 41 carries, you think it's over a multi-game stretch, not in one game. So I know his legs are tired today. Another thing, Illinois' defense played very well. When you limit your opponent to passing total between two quarterbacks, 6 of 18 for 38 yards and 3 interceptions, I think you're doing something right. So I think Minnesota's got to figure out their offense if they want to get to bowl eligibility at this point, because Tanner Morgan got hurt. It's going to be, I mean, it's going to be interesting. So I think I'm done calling Illinois overrated. I think that was a little mean. They earned it this week, so kudos to them.
Yep. We'll switch gears over to the Big 12 again. Texas, Iowa State, another close game for Texas. Definitely feels like they're a more confident team with Quinn Ewers behind the helm. But they're giving teams some fright. They're giving themselves some fright. It's going to be interesting to see what happens when they go up against Oklahoma State and TCU. Do they play either of those games yet? I'm trying to remember who all they played.
They've played. They still have to. So Oklahoma State is this week, and it's
Yes,
in
Oklahoma State
Stillwater.
is going to be big.
Then they go at Kansas State, and then they play TCU at home.
So a tough 3-game stretch here for Texas. But they won the game that they needed to in order to stay relevant here. If they're able to handle Oklahoma State and TCU, they're in the driver's seat to be in the Big 12 championship game.
I'm not. I know Texas played well against Oklahoma. I don't know. It's just when you're sticking around with the team that is at the bottom of the conference standings, it worries me that they're playing down to their opposition. You're right, Quinn Ewers is a difference maker, so we're going to see how well or how much that makes an impact for the remaining conference games. But I'm not going to say Texas is my favorite to win the Big 12 at this point, but I wouldn't be surprised if they make a run because they are in a good position. So it'll just depend on if. I was going to say
I think it's going to come out of. I think it's going to come down to Oklahoma State and TCU. I think
so too.
teams. Speaking of Oklahoma, they got their group back on offense at least. Won against Kansas at home with some nifty Unity uniforms. Their defense is still not to be found. Brent Venables needs to get that figured out. But with Dylan Gabriel back, I think that was huge. Having their quarterback back looked like a completely different team. So Oklahoma's going to right now just have to outscore teams in order to get back into it. But they've got a massive uphill battle to go with things needing to go their way to have a chance to win the Big 12 before they head off to the SEC.
It's crazy how different a team looks when they have their quarterback. I think that when it comes to the defensive side, I think you're going to have to give Brent a year or two to get guys that fit his system in. it's always tough. I feel like it's a little tougher to get defensive schemes in than offensive schemes, just because it's tough to. I just think playing defense is tougher than offense. So um, I think that's going to come with time. I think that if you want a good defensive team, you have the right guy for it. It's just going to be patient and letting him get his guys in and get his schemes in. So it's going to be tough for this year, but I think in the next couple of years we'll kind of see Oklahoma's defense start to look like what we expect a Brent Venables defense to look like.
Speaking of the difference that a quarterback makes, will NC State Syracuse,
Ooh,
I think we found with the news that Leary's out for the season. I think that that's some tough news for the NC State faithful. Their offense struggled throughout the
mightily.
entire game. No touchdowns, able to get 9 points total, fall into the queue. And I think that if Chambers can't find his groove, then I think Syracuse is in a very tough spot. They need Syracuse and Clemson to both lose 3 games, which I don't think is really possible at this point. Clemson's only got 3 games left in the ACC, so I think NC State's now looking to right the ship and play for a good bowl game. But I think their ACC hopes this year are pretty much dead in the water.
Looking at their schedule, they got Virginia Tech next week. So I mean, even with Jack Chambers at quarterback, I feel like that's a game they should go ahead and win, and it's at home. They're lucky that they got Wake Forest at home. I think Wake's going to beat them, but I think that it might. I mean, who knows? Anything could happen in Raleigh. Then they got Boston College at home. They go to Louisville and they go to North Carolina. I'm looking at this schedule. I'm confident in them beating Virginia Tech, beating Boston College, and beating Louisville. But I think you can pencil in a loss for Wake Forest and a loss for North Carolina. So that's already 4 losses. It's a shame that they were so. This is probably their best team ever, and it looks like it'll be another 8-4 season. So I mean, it sucks for Devin Leary. He's a great player. Reps the state of New Jersey pretty well, but it's just tough for the Wolfpack. It's horrible, and it's so on brand for NC State to get their heart broken. I feel so bad for them, but
Mm-hmm. And again, we look at it. It's amazing. College football quarterback does everything. You look at Kentucky against Mississippi State last week. Kentucky looked like they couldn't play anything against South Carolina without Levis. This week they have Levis back, and they look like a completely different team, and we're able to come out with a win. When it comes to quarterback play in college football, it is so important.
yeah,
Um, it's just you need your quarterback to be the focal point at this point because of how the games are officiated and how the rules are, and just the playmakers that these teams have on the outside. Um, I mean, you look at Clemson last year where DJ's quarterback play was subpar and struggling to keep the ball safe and find his receivers and get consistency out of them. And you look at Clemson, um, very quickly got out of the national media spotlight for the playoff because they didn't have a quarterback. And then this year, it's a 180. I mean, you look at his stats compared to others second year starting, and it looks like he's found his groove. So it's a tough break for NC State. Tough break for Devin Leary. But you know, we'll see what they can do in the next week, next month and a half, before you get into December and see if they can, find some wins and try and get a good season out of this.
yeah. I
All right, you ready? You ready to talk about the game of the year, as people are already calling it? Going down to Rocky Top, we've got Tennessee Orange smoking cigars now, as the Tennessee Volunteers have a walk-off field goal to beat the Alabama Crimson Tide and to snap a 15-year drought against the Tide. It was insane. I'm struggling to find words to describe it.
I mean, unfortunately, I had to go to work during it, so I was so mad that I missed the second half. But I watched the highlights, and like you said, it's hard to like put into words how awesome that game was. It reminded me of why I love college football. It's just the traditions, the rivalry, the stakes, the play. It was all there. I love Tennessee fans taking down the goalpost and throwing it in the river. The one thing I will say about Alabama is when are they going to recruit a kicker that can make kicks? Because I feel like they'd have like at least two more national championships if they had a kicker that could kick. Yeah, it amazes me that they can't recruit a guy because I mean Will Reichert's a good kicker, and don't get me wrong, like he's obviously there for a reason, but they had a chance to win this game and they missed it bad. And then Tennessee's offense got credit to them. They got it down there and they got it exactly where they needed it to be. And they made it even though it got tipped. Like it was a knuckleball. It was unreal. Like it was Tennessee. I definitely think Tennessee won this game more than Alabama lost it. Tennessee looks like one of the best, if not the best team in the country right now. Um, it it's just amazing that every time they were on offense, I didn't feel like they were in trouble. Yeah, they had two turnovers and a punt, but like every other time, like they just looked like they were with ease. Like it didn't look hard. It just looked easy. So that's I'm happy for Tennessee to get that monkey off the back. I'm always happy when Alabama loses. So it's gonna be I'm really looking, like I said, I'm really looking forward to that matchup with Georgia. They have a tough matchup with Kentucky. And for Alabama, I mean, the season's not over, obviously, because you still have to play Ole Miss for the chance to be in Atlanta. But that game, one, it's in Oxford, and two, if Ole Miss can put it together, I mean, they could beat anybody. They're number 7 in the country right now. So I mean, it's going to be a great couple months for both Tennessee and Alabama. I'm interested. I'm looking at that Georgia Tennessee game, but I'm also looking at that Alabama Ole Miss game because if Alabama loses again, obviously they're done, and that would be a giant gone that everybody had penciled into the playoffs. So it was a momentous weekend and in Knoxville.
Yep. We've got I mean Tennessee early on. First quarter jumped out 21-7 lead. I felt like Tennessee could do no wrong. They were playing at will against Alabama. Bama, give them credit, came back. I mean, they had a lot of miscues throughout the entire game, a lot of penalties. I think Nick Saban's face is still burnt red from all of that. But I mean, it came down to plays. I mean, you've got Hyatt, the receiver from Tennessee, guy had 6 receptions, 5 of them for touchdowns, 207 yards. I mean, the guy was a big play
Have a day.
machine. Have a day. That's right. Hendon Hooker, I think, has made the case to be the front runner for the Heisman after that. So, and what's nuts is you look at this, pulling it back to the ACC. Hendon Hooker transferred from Virginia Tech. Hyatt had committed to Virginia Tech. Both of them could have been at Blacksburg, and instead they're at Tennessee, given this kind of performance.
Poor Virginia Tech.
For Virginia Tech.
I
So
just
yeah, I mean, there's what else can you say about that game? It's just it it sets up a lot of interesting things as we look at potentially having 4 SEC teams to be with one loss at the end of the season, where you have you know Ole Miss's only loss being Alabama, not being able to get into the uh, SEC championship game. Alabama only loss being to Tennessee and winning the SEC championship. Georgia being able to beat Tennessee and only have the one loss to Alabama and be the runner up in the SEC. I mean, that's a couple of teams that with a lot of high powered offenses and a good case to be in the playoff. How do you deal with that? With looking at potentially an undefeated TCU out of the Big 12, an undefeated UCLA out of the Pac-12, an undefeated Clemson out of the ACC, and then Ohio State or Michigan, whoever wins that game coming out of the Big Ten. I mean, this is a year that I think people have been hoping for, um, where all of these big teams are playing really well, and the margin of error is razor thin. And this is where I think people are saying this is why we need a 12-team playoff to get these teams to go ahead and play against it and get a true champion. But right now the regular season's the playoff. Every
Yeah.
single game is huge going forward.
And the other thing is, like you said, it's why people are wanting to have a 12-team playoff. And I think the most important thing that people need to remember is that the bottom tiers of these conferences are more similar than everyone wants to say they are. Just because an SEC team is in the SEC doesn't mean that every team they play is a juggernaut. Because you listed all the, like, what if there's 4 one-loss SEC teams? Like, okay, not every team on that resume is going to look good. It's that's where you have to realize that there's more parity than people think, and that, I mean, the bottom of the Big Ten sucks, but every bottom tier of each conference sucks. There are
I
teams
mean,
that
you look
are
at there are absolute divisions that are just atrocious right now. You've got the Big Ten West. Who comes out of that? Probably what, Illinois, I think, are in the
Illinois,
West.
I think, is the favorite right now.
And
And
then you've
then
got the ACC Coastal, where Georgia Tech controls their own destiny to get in the ACC championship game. I mean,
it,
it's college football. This is what we love about it, where any team can beat anybody on any night. And you got to come out, you got to play 60 minutes every single week, and it's hard. It's
yeah,
hard to win games, and I think if people can separate out of the conference allegiance and see that, then we can appreciate just how much of a good product the regular season of college football really is. There's
yeah.
nothing else like it.
And that's why I believe that that's why I'm hoping for unlock or undefeated conference champions for every Power Five conference. So I want UCLA to win out. I want TCU to win out. I want, obviously, Ohio State or Michigan. Whoever wins the conference is going to win out. Whoever wins the SEC, I want them to win out. I want Clemson to win out, or God forbid Syracuse beats us. Syracuse win out. Just make it so that way it's more conferences are being included by, I mean, saying sorry. Like, if you lost, you lost. Like, these teams earned a right to play for a national championship because they didn't lose. They took care of their business. You shouldn't fault a team for being in a conference that they're in. Like TCU, they left. I forget what conference they're in. The Mountain West. They left the Mountain West to go to the Big 12 to play in the big games. So why? And at that time that made sense geographically. So why punish them for that now? I feel like if you're undefeated Power 5 champion, you should be in. Make
And that's
make
the fun
make
thing. We're gonna have five. We could have five champions out of the Power Five undefeated. Who gets left out then?
Then that's when you have to look at opponents, like see which teams played the tough. That's when the conference can start talking about, oh, well, this conference is harder to win, because obviously the SEC is harder to win than the Pac-12 or the Big Ten, or actually not the Big Ten. I shouldn't say that, but the ACC or the Big 12. Like, that's understandable. The SEC does have relatively more high-powered teams, but I feel like a team, like I said, a team shouldn't be at fault for not being in the SEC, but winning every one of their games. So I can already see it now that, like you said, if Alabama runs the table, if Georgia runs the table, they meet, and then Alabama wins, so that it's one loss Georgia, one loss Bama. I don't want a Power 5 champion that's undefeated to be left out because of that. I don't think
So
that's right.
here's the little thought we want you guys to think about for going forward. Let us know what you think about this scenario. We have the Alabama and Georgia win out. We've got those 4 teams in the SEC with 1 loss. Meanwhile, you've got TCU undefeated in the Big 12, UCLA undefeated in the Pac-12, Ohio State and Michigan undefeated in the Big 10, and then Clemson or Syracuse undefeated out of the ACC. Do we keep an SEC team out if they only have 1 loss, and those other teams all are undefeated? So let
I
us know what you guys think. I'm curious.
I vote emphatically yes, because it's like I said, it's they won a conference championship and they're undefeated. What more do you have to go into it? Like that's literally from the beginning of the playoff, that was the blueprint. Win your conference, be undefeated, you're in. Don't change it because SEC teams only have one loss. 0 is less than 1.
Yep. At the end of the game, at the end of the day, win your games and then you put it up to the playoff committee to decide. And if you're good enough, then it's going to be an easy decision. So I'm looking forward to it. I hope you guys are too. Thanks for joining in on us. And as always, go Tigers.
Go Tigers.